Good morning. My name is Pierre Helwi, and I'm the Extension Viticulture Specialist at Texas A&M AgriLife. And today I'll be speaking about my PhD project, which I have done in 4 or 5 years ago at the University of Bordeaux in France. So in this project, we studied the direct and the only effect of vine nitrogen status on aroma compounds without interference with vine water stress or vine vigor. So this experimentation was done in 2013 and 2014 in different plots in France. But for today and for this presentation, I will be speaking only about 2013 for a plot planted with Sauvignon Blanc around Bordeaux area. So in this experimentation, we used 3 different treatments. We had a control without any fertilization. We had a soil N50 treatment where we added 50 units of nitrogen per hectare to the soil. And we have a soil N100 treatment when we put 100 units of nitrogen per hectare to the soil. Nitrogen was added relatively late in the season, and we split the application into 2. It was at bud break and just after bloom to minimize an effect of nitrogen on vine vigor, so on shading, which can influence the amount of the aroma compounds in question. And we were irrigating the treatments during the entire season, so also to avoid a water deficit, which can also influence the amount of aroma compounds in question. Vine water status was followed during the season by measuring the steam water potential. We sampled berries at the different stages, at bunch closure, at mid-veraison, 28 days after mid-veraison, and at harvest, which was 35 days after veraison. So the first thing was to check if the vines well assimilated the nitrogen we added. So this is why we measured the total nitrogen at veraison in the petiole and leafy blades. So as you can see on the graph on the left, there was like a big difference between the different treatments where the control having the lowest total nitrogen in the petiole, while the 2 other treatments, the fertilized treatments, having a higher amount of total nitrogen in the petiole. And the same thing was observed in leafy blade, where the 2 fertilized modalities having the highest amount of total nitrogen, while the control having the lowest amount of total nitrogen. So both petioles and leaf blades at veraison showed higher N status for fertilized modalities compared to the control. We also have done some measure using the N tester. For people who are not familiar with the N tester, it's a device which can measure the intensity of green color of the leaf. So if you have a high amount of nitrogen, your leaf will be having like a dark green color. So the N tester will give high value. While if you have a deficit in nitrogen, the leaf will be having a pale green color. So the N tester will give low value. As you can see, the control has the lowest amount, shows the lowest values for N tester, while the soil N100 treatment showed the highest amount of nitrogen, showing again that the nitrogen was well assimilated by the fertilized modalities. We also measured the yeast available nitrogen in the mast at harvest, which is a great indicator for nitrogen status of the vine. And again, we can see that the fertilized modalities have higher amount of yan compared to the unfertilized control. So 2 points need to be noted here. The first one is that leaf tissue N status at veraison can reflect yan amount at harvest. So if your leaf tissue analysis showed higher numbers at veraison, so we'll be expecting high yan in your mast at harvest. And the second point is that the vines were well assimilated the nitrogen, showing high vine nitrogen status for fertilized modalities compared to the control, mainly for the soil N100 treatment. Okay? As I mentioned before, we added the nitrogen relatively late in the season and we split the application into 2 to minimize the effect of an application on vine vigor. So we measured vine vigor to make sure that this happened. So we measured the primary and the secondary leaf area at shoot growth cessation. As you can see, there was no impact of N application on these two parameters, showing no effect of N application on vine vigor. We also want to be sure that there was also no difference in yield components. So we measured berry weight at harvest and yield at harvest. And again, we observed no difference between treatments concerning yield components. So all the treatments had comparable values. So if you want to summarize this first part, which we call the agronomic part, we saw in our study there was absence of water deficit during the season by measuring the steam water potential. There was no difference in vigor and yield between treatments, and only vine nitrogen status was different between the treatment, with higher N status for the fertilized modalities compared to the control, mainly for the soil N100 treatment. Okay? So all this will allow us to measure the only and the direct effect of vine N status on aroma compounds without interference with vine water status and vine vigor. Okay? The two aroma compounds which we're interested in this project were IBMP, responsible for the green pepper aroma, and 3SH, responsible for the grapefruit aroma. So let's start by the IBMP. IBMP is from the family of free aroma compounds. So it's the same compound we can find when we taste or smell a berry as well in the wine. Okay? It's a very stable compound with levels present in the must very comparable to levels present in the wine. It is considered as a negative aroma in red wines, while in white wines it's present to a certain extent can be acceptable because it gives some freshness to the wine. In some area, like in New Zealand, they like a little bit of IBMP in their wines because of this freshness. In the berry, the amount of IBMP reached its maximum at bunch closure, and it decreased during the season due to a degradation by the sunlight. So if something is blocking the sunlight to reach the bunches in your cluster zone, for example, high vigor, so you will have less degradation of IBMP, so more IBMP in the wine. So we measured IBMP in the grape berry and in the wine. So in the grape berry, and as expected, the amount of IBMP was maximum at bunch closure, and it decreased during the season. And as we can see, there was no effect of N application on the amount of IBMP in the grape berry. So all the treatments had similar or comparable values regarding IBMP in the grape berry. We also measured IBMP in the wine, and again, we saw no effect of N application on IBMP in the wine. So on the left, this is Bordeaux 2013, the plot I was speaking about all this presentation, but I also wanted to add the other plots and the other years to show you that we had the same results when we repeated the application. So there was no effect of N application on IBMP levels in the wine. So the takeaway message for this aroma compound is we found no direct effect of vine nitrogen status on IBMP level in berries and in wines. And our results are contradictory to other studies where they showed a relationship between nitrogen and IBMP. So in their case, in their studies, they added the nitrogen, they increased the vigor, so more vigor, more shading, less degradation of IBMP by the sunlight, more IBMP in the wine. So in our study, because we controlled the vigor, so we didn't see any a direct relationship between nitrogen and IBMP. Okay? So let's move to the other aroma compound, the 3SH. So it's from the family of volatile thiols. It's considered as a positive aroma in many varieties, such as Cabernet Sauvignon, Sauvignon Blanc, Petit Arvin, and Grenache. 3SH itself is not present in the berry. It's only present in the wine. And it's issued from precursors present in the berry by the activity of Saccharomyces cerevisiae during the fermentation. So here we are in the berry. So as you can see, there is no 3SH there. Only its precursors are present, the GLUT3SH and cis3SH. And both of these precursors are inodorous and non-volatile. And these precursors are transformed during the fermentation into 3SH, which is an odorous and volatile aroma compounds. So we measured one of these precursors, the glut-3SH, in the grape berry and in the must, and we measured the 3SH itself in the wine. So in the grape berry, we can see that the amount of glut-3SH increased during the season, reaching a maximum at harvest. And we also can see there was a positive effect of N application on the amount of these precursors, mainly at the harvest stage, where the soil N100 treatment showed higher value of these precursors compared to the control. The same thing was also observed in the must, where we also found a positive effect of N application on the amount of glut-3SH compared to the control. So there was a positive effect of vine N application on the content of glut-3SH in grape berries and wine. So regarding 3SH, this is a regarding the 3SH itself in the wine, we also found a positive effect of N-nitrogen application on these aroma compounds. So in Bordeaux 2013, there was a tendency of a positive effect, but this positive effect was confirmed during the other years and in the other areas. So it was a positive effect of N application on 3SH levels in the wine. So for this part, the takeaway message is there is a direct positive effect of vine nitrogen status on the amount of glut-3SH in berries and must and on 3SH level in the wine. Okay? So let's conclude this presentation. And this is a takeaway message. So if you want to remember something from this presentation, this is the slide to remember. A split application of nitrogen relatively late in the season in the absence of water deficit, it will increase the vine N status, like we saw with the N tester, with the YAN, with the analysis of petiole and leaf blade. It will have no effect on vine vigor and yield. It will have no effect on IBMP levels in grape berry and wine, but it will have a positive effect on the level of glut-3SH, the precursor of 3SH in grape berry and must, and on the amount of 3SH itself in the wine. Okay? If you are interested to learn more about this project and to see all the results from all the areas and all the years, you can go and check them on this published articles. They are online. And this study was also complemented by a genetic or transcriptomic study where we analyzed the expression of some genes in the biosynthetic pathway of this aroma compound to prove our results, and also to search for new genes implicated in the biosynthetic pathway of this aroma compound. So if you are interested to see the entire project and to see the transcriptomic or genetic approach, you can go and check them in these articles. Finally, I would like to thank all the sponsors who sponsored this project, and I would like also to thank you for your attention. Thank you. We've had questions. Time for questions, yes.
Would you expect these results to be different in a climate that does always experience water deficits and does not have any summer rain?
Yes, because water deficits play a major role in influencing this aroma compound. So water deficits maybe will be a step further in this study where we should measure like the effect of water status. But if you have a deficit of water in your area, so it will also influence the amount of this compound. So yes, it will be like different approach. Yes. Other questions? Yes.
On your slides, we were discussing the IBMP aroma compound.
Uh-huh.
You said that you controlled the vigor. I was just curious, how did you pull leaves or?
I don't know. We didn't touch the canopy because we added the nitrogen relatively late in the season and we split the application. We minimize the effect of nitrogen on vine vigor. But the canopy was not touched, and so yeah.
And the nitrogen was added via fertigation in the irrigation, or?
Yeah, so in Bordeaux area, you are not allowed to irrigate. But for this project, it was like, it was different. So we added to the soil, and we irrigate after this.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions?
Did you say when is late, which period for your application?
So we added just after bud break and at bloom, which is considered late. And nitrogen is normally added between bud break and veraison, but I think at veraison it's thought to be too late, and nitrogen will be assimilated at this stage, and we will push the vigor. So this is why I prefer like these 2 stages and not go later than bloom. But bud break and bloom are when we added the nitrogen.
Did you measure the leaf nitrogen maximum before you made your last late nitrogen application?
Before adding that, no, we didn't done it. We had done just at veraison. We didn't measure the leaf, but we were following the N status using the N tester. So as the N tester, you can do it like every day because it's not destructible technique. You go and you like measure the leaf, and during the season we were seeing that this difference between treatments with always higher nitrogen in the fertilizer modalities. But leaf analysis itself, no, we didn't do it. Awesome, thank you.